We're going to do a simple divorce. I'm going to teach you. And I do have some fillable forms that you can download to follow along. Check in the description below for a link to download the fillable forms. If you cannot get the fillable forms, you will still follow along if you have the paper packet. So let's begin. This is going to be a simple divorce. So it's going to be a short-term divorce with no children and no property, okay? And here we go. Okay. A couple of quick things you need to know about filing a divorce in California. Okay. How long do you have to live in California to file a divorce here? So you have to live in California 6 months or more to be able to file a divorce here. So if you're coming from another state or another country, you have to have a 6-month residency in California to be able to file here. And then in the counties, if let's say you're filing in Los Angeles County, you have to have lived in Los Angeles County for 3 months or more to file in Los Angeles County. So those are some of the rules to qualify to file a divorce in California. Next, we're going to talk about long-term versus short-term marriage. So long-term marriage is if you've been married for 10 years or more, that's considered a long-term marriage. The way it affects spousal support is if the person requesting spousal support is asking for spousal support on a long-term marriage, and if the court grants it, then they will receive it until they remarry or die. In a short-term marriage, let's say your marriage is 5 years, and the court grants spousal support to a person, one of the parties requesting, then it would be half the term of the marriage. So if it's a 5-year marriage, spousal support would be granted for 2.5 years. It can extend from the 2.5 years, but it would be to the court's discretion. Okay, moving right along. Now we're going to talk about separate property versus community property. Separate property is what you've acquired before marriage and after the date of separation. I'm going to show you a little chart so you could get an idea. Community property is anything you've acquired during the periods of marriage. So in community property, let's say you purchased a car and it's only in your name and you have the title. So you say, this is mine because it's under my name. No, anything you purchase during marriage is community property, which means it has to be equally split, or you guys have to decide if it's an unequal split. So for example, if it's a car and you want to keep that car, you have to find the Kelley Blue Book value of that car, of what it's worth now, and you have to give the other person half of what it's worth minus your debt. And then, of course, when it comes to houses, another scenario. So if you cannot pay the other person half, then you sell the car and then you guys split the profits. That's usually how it is. The only exception I'm going to cover having to do with separate and community, there is one thing that is separate and community, or can be separate and community, and that is a pension. So if you have a pension from work and you have accumulated some money in your pension prior to your marriage, and then you continue to accumulate during marriage, and you keep accumulating after separation, so part of it would be separate property and other portions would be community property. And that's going to get a little complicated. We're not going to delve into that. I just wanted to do a quick overview of that. Okay, now we're going to what we're going to do now is we're going to start the forms, okay? And this is the packet that should have been, that's down, if you download it, this is the packet you're going to see, and you could just follow along with me. Now this page is called a worksheet page, meaning once you print out all the documents that we're going to prepare today, this page gets taken out, and of course the cover page, because these two do not get filed with the court. This is just, this worksheet is created so that you put in your name and address once and it's going to appear in all the forms. So I just made it convenient for you. Okay, now we're going to just do obviously a sample. So let's say I'm Sonia Smith, and I'm filing against David Smith. Okay, and then of course your courthouse would be based on, this is mainly focused on LA County, but if you're in another county in California, obviously you can find out through that court website on where you can file your case based on your zip code. So for LA County, go to lacounty.org, and there's a zip code finder, and you put in your zip code, it'll tell you what courthouse you can file in. But if you don't want to do that, everyone can file in 111 Hill Street, which is the Stanley Moss Courthouse. That's the central courthouse, so anybody that lives in LA County can file there. But for your convenience, if you want to file in the court that is closest to you, then you have to find out where your zip code lets you file. So we're in our scenario, let's just pick Pasadena. And then again, we're going to fill in our information here. So, the address. And of course, you're going to have to fill in your own address. Let's see. And then for the city, state, and zip code, you're going to write it twice because some forms, the structure is different, so we need both kinds. And then, of course, your phone number and your email address. Okay, and then we scroll down, and this information would be your soon-to-be ex-husband's information. So for example, if you're living in the same address, that's fine. You still have to type in their address. But in this scenario, we're going to say that he moved out and he has a different address. And let's say he is not in Pasadena, but you're filing in Pasadena. As long as you live in Pasadena or he lives in Pasadena, you can file the paperwork in the district where one of you lives. Okay, so that's fine. You don't both have to live in the district where you're filing, as long as one of you lives there. Okay, and we're just going to go and put in the rest of the information. Okay, and then of course if there's kids, you add the kids, but because this is going to be a simplified divorce, we're in our little scenario here, we're not going to have any children, but of course you can list your children here and their birth dates, and it will come up in all the forms that are needed. And then if you're going to file it today, you can date today's date. If you're not, you can leave this open. For example, if you're filling it out, let's say that you put today's date, but you're not going to file it today, you're going to file it tomorrow, that's okay. It's okay if it's a couple of days off. The court doesn't mind if you put a different date. Now, for this is the fee waiver, because there is a filing fee of $435 to file a divorce case. And if you are low income, you can ask the court to waive your fees. So in my scenario, let's say I'm going to be low income, so I receive food stamps and Medi-Cal. Okay, so I will, if you mark any of these boxes in the A section, for example, then you don't need to complete the second page. However, if you are working, you can still qualify for a fee waiver. You just have to put your job title here and your employer's information. And then of course, this is a chart right here. This is a chart that shows you the number of people in your household and what their gross monthly income should be combined for you to meet the guideline qualifications. Okay, but we're not going to go over that. We're going to assume that we did section A, so we're going to qualify. So if you do not qualify from section A and you do section B, then you do have to fill out the second page, number 7, 8, and 9. If you did section A, which is the Medi-Cal and government benefits, you don't fill that out. And this is the order for the fee waiver. You don't fill it out because the captions are already filled up. since we did that worksheet, that's the miracle of the worksheet. It fills out all your captions and all the forms, and I made that for your convenience. Okay, now we're going to move on to the heart of the paperwork, which my computer's lagging here, you guys. Sorry about that. All right, this is the summons which would accompany the petition. But before we move on, please, if you like what you've seen so far, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you can get the latest contents as I post them. This is the simplified version, but I will be posting more videos on how to do more of the complicated. Okay, we're going to move on. So petitioner, of course, Sonia Smith is, for example, me, and then here is the respondent. It is kind of in the opposite order, but the fields know where to put what, so you don't have to worry about that. And then here, of course, the courthouse Pasadena, and then your name and your address is already here. Very convenient, no need to type anything. Then this second page is just informational, but it goes along with the summons. And then this is the petition. So every petition has to accompany a summons. They go hand in hand. So if you're ever going to modify, let's say, the petition, you always have to include a summons, even if there was nothing wrong in your summons. If you modify or amend the petition, you must include the summons. Okay, moving on. So we're going to say we're filing a divorce. It's a dissolution of marriage. And then, of course, if it's a domestic partnership, you can mark this as opposed to this, right? So we're just going to do the regular divorce here. And then here we are married. It's asking for the relationship. And of course, you just mark whatever applies to you. Okay. And then this is about the residency. This is for the court to determine if they have jurisdiction over your case. And that is what we discussed about earlier. If you lived in the state of California 6 months or more and at least 3 months in LA County, then you qualify. So either you or the respondent would have to have lived here 6 months or more for you to be able to file here. So let's just say we both have lived here 6 months or more. And then here we have to put the date of marriage. So in our scenario, we're going to put January 10, 2015. And then date of separation, we are going to put January 15, 2020. Okay. So then here, it doesn't automatically calculate. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it to do that. So you're going to have to put the amount of years and months totaling from the date of marriage to date of separation. Quick thing about date of separation. The date of separation is not written anywhere. So that is something you determine. The way you would determine is, for example, the date you decided you're going to get a divorce, or the date one of you moved out, or the date you no longer had marital interaction. So this is a date that can be contested by the respondent, or it can be, I mean, if the respondent doesn't respond, they'll just go by your date of separation, okay? And the reason the dates of separation might get contested is if it has to do with, for example, if you wrote a date that's going to be more than 10 years, and then, you know, you use that to your advantage when it comes to the spousal support, then it might be contested by the respondent. But in this scenario, we are not doing that, so we're going to put here 5 years. And since they were both in January, there isn't any months in between. So we're just going to put 5 years and 0 months. Okay. And then in our simple scenario, there are no minor children. But if you do have minor children, of course, you'll mark this box. And then you just indicate your child's name, birth date, and age. Okay. But with our scenario, we're going to say no children. And then, of course, if there are children that are born outside of the marriage prior to date of marriage or after separation, you will have to mark this. And only because if the child is born outside of marriage in the hospital, they ask the father to sign a paternity declaration acknowledging that they are the father of this child. Okay, we're going to move on. Next. Here on the second page of the petition, we have we're filing divorce. Irreconcilable difference is the most common one. Again, this is very important. If you miss this and you do not mark this box, your papers will be rejected when you come down to doing the judgment. So pay attention to this. The second option is not a common one, and I'm not going to go over it. We will just move on. And of course, there's annulment, but annulments are not given that easily. So you will have to research about that. Okay, moving on. For the child custody and visitation part, we are going to skip since there are no children. And then this is an automatic wording that they put pertaining to, the child support. If you ask for child support, you don't really need to indicate that you're asking for child support because there's already wording for it. So when you do the final judgment, you can ask for child support because this is saying that you would have the option to ask later on in the final documents. Okay. And then if you want to ask for anything else that is pertaining to child support, you can indicate it here, okay, in these extra little slots that I provided for you. And then when it comes to spousal support, since this scenario, our marriage is only 5 years, it is short-term marriage. So I can put, I want to terminate for me and for the respondent. And then once the court does terminate it, when you get your final orders, then neither one of you can go back later and say you want spousal support. So if you're not sure if you want to terminate for you, you could put terminate only for respondent and then maybe reserve for you for later determination, just in case you want to ask for it later. Okay? And then for separate property, we can just assume that there is no separate property. We're going to say no separate property. If there is, then of course you can mark this one and then you can list it below, whatever separate property, if you only need these 3 slots. If you have more than what is available here, you can mark property declaration attached, and then you have to go through the property declaration and itemize your separate property. But we're not going to go over that because this is considered a simple divorce. So we're going to say no separate property and no community property. Again, you have the option of saying you have community property and either attaching an FL160 or itemizing your things below if 4 slots is all you need. So that is provided for your convenience. Okay. And then as for attorney's fees, since you are doing this on your own, assuming you don't have an attorney, but you can still mark this saying that you want the respondent to pay for your attorney's fees. If in the future, while the divorce is still in process, you want to later on get an attorney, if you have marked this, you can ask him for attorney's fees. If you have not marked this, then you have less of a chance of getting the respondent to pay. But again, that's legal advice. I don't know. You can mark it or leave it blank. That's all on you. And then if you want to get your former name restored, of course, you can write it here. In our scenario, we'll just leave it. Okay. And then anything else you want to include in here that you think you want the court to know, you can just type it in there. I provided a slot for that. Okay. And then here we're going to move on. We're going to date it. You don't have to date it. You could leave it blank and then date it when you're going to sign it. I'm just going to date it now. And then of course, after you print, make sure you sign it right here. And then you could just scratch this out because there is no attorney. So you don't have to sign in both places. You just sign here and you leave that blank because you don't have an attorney. Okay. And then this form is a cover sheet and it's a local form for LA County. So if you are in a different county in California and you're watching this, you may have to go to your local courthouse and find out if there's any local forms that you need to do that differ from this, and then just fill those out. But if you're in LA County, this is the form that you will need. And then you can mark this if you want to get electronic notifications from the court. But in this scenario, we are not going to mark it. Let's assume we don't want electronic notification. Okay, and everything's already filled out. Here It's saying, do you have minor children? No. Okay, and then here it's saying parties agreed to mediate. If you think you guys are going to be in agreement to property and support, you can click that, or only property, only support. If you're not sure, you could leave it blank. And then parties intend to proceed by, let's say default meaning he's not going to participate and you're going to move on your own. This one, it says check one if applicable. So this one we're going to leave blank. And then it says, do you need to join other parties in this action? We're going to say no. And I think that's referring to if you have a pension, you do have to do a joinder to join your pension into your divorce if you're going to list your pension in the property section. Okay, moving right along here, it's asking, are you going to need an interpreter when you go to court? We're going to say no, but if you say yes, then you will indicate what language interpreter you're going to need, and then the court will provide that interpreter if you need to go to a hearing. But in this scenario, we're going to say no. And then type of action, it already marked the solution for us, and then we say without children. And then maybe filed in Central District, that's the downtown Stanley Moss Courthouse. But here we're going to file it because Pasadena is the smaller district, so we're going to say district where one or more of the parties reside. That's what we're going to do because we're filing in Pasadena, not in Central. That's all we got to mark for that. There's nothing else to do on this page. Easy breezy, right? Moving right along. So if I'm going too fast for you guys, don't worry. You can always rewind and rewatch all this, right? Pause, rewind, rewatch. And then for Pasadena, it's the Northeast District. And if you don't know what district it is, you can go to lacourt.org and find the courthouse that you are filing, and it will tell you what district it is based on location. But I just know this automatically, so I just marked it. And then here, date and sign after you print it. It says attorney or party without attorney, which is referring to you. Okay, let's see what we got left. Okay, and then this is another local form that is fairly new that the court wants to include here, saying that both parties have to do their financial information and share their financial information with each other within 60 days. They're called PDDs. It's just their preliminary decks of disclosure is what it's called, which is forms FL 140, FL 141, FL 150, and 2 FL 160s, 1 separate property and 1 community property. But in our scenario, we don't have anything because this is a simple divorce. So we will only do the FL 140 and 141. Okay, moving on. This is the proof of service of summons. So we're almost at the finish line, everybody. Stay with me. And if you've enjoyed it so far, I know it's boring because it's just a lesson. But if you've enjoyed it so far and you found it easy to follow along, just click on that like button and subscribe to this channel to get more content. Okay, moving right along. Here we're going to say divorce, right? You're filing a divorce. And are we including any attachments? Since it's a simple one, we did not do any of these attachments, so we are not going to include anything. But if you were to, you would mark here, you would mark separate property, you would mark. So you can do your PDDs, which are the preliminary decks of disclosure, along with your summons and petition, and serve it all together. But in this scenario, we are not doing that, okay? And then the rest of it is something that gets filled out by the person who's going to serve the documents. You can stay tuned for a bonus video and I will explain to you how many copies you're going to need and how the service is going to take place, okay? And then here, the rest of the forms, it says stop, do not use these forms. So in this packet, we're also including a blank response if the respondent chooses to respond to the divorce petition. All right, that is all, everyone. Thank you for sticking around, and look out for that bonus video that I will be making, and it will explain to you how, after you do all this, you